This conference will now be recorded.
Seven. Let's establish the quorum. First thing, Mark Henry.
Here.
Christine. Here. Trey. Here. Mike.
Here.
Laura.
Here.
And Rachel. Here. And Susan. All right, we're all here. Did anybody have any introductions? Any announcements? I don't know that do we have any citizen presentations?
I don't know. I don't know anybody asked.
Okay, so let's approve the minutes from October 5th and get that passed. We've got a lot on our agenda tonight.
And what makes one comment, I wasn't here.
Did I have you on there? No, look under a form was established. I don't think I have you there. Notice this one before.
I got you.
Okay.
We thought you were here. It must have been a ghost.
We missed you.
We're not.
Where can you get your notes? Anybody see anything wrong with it? I have a motion to accept the minutes.
I make the motion to accept the minutes.
Anybody second? All approved? Okay. I don't have any introductions, so I think, when they have a citizen presentation. So we need to, the first thing on the agenda was consider, discuss, and take possible action on the petition of consent to create the MUD. So is anyone here to talk about the MUD? You're up, sir.
Okay. What does it do on my
That's whatever else.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. If you would pass one on over to.
Good evening. My name is Mark Sparrow, and I'm representing Blanco Investment Partners for their petition for the citizen consent to the creation of a MUD. on a 385-acre tract of land, basically at the northeast corner of State Highway 281 and Exit 32. And basically here just to answer your questions that they have with respect to the mud.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing, or tell us about the mud and how you're going to progress, et cetera? I missed the meeting, so only thing I know is what I can pull down on Google.
Basically, what we're proposing to do is, a mud is a public financing mechanism for public infrastructure. And so we have quite a bit of infrastructure that needs to be built on that property, including wastewater, water, drainage infrastructure, as well as roads. What allows us to the developer the ability to go out and after the developer makes the improvements based on assessed value, and once there's assessed value on the property, then bonds are sold to reimburse the developer for those costs for wastewater, water, drainage, and roads. And so that's the whole thing. And what it does is it's a cheaper way of getting financing for the project rather than going out to a bank or raising additional equity from potential other equity partners. And what that means is that with the lower interest and lower financing costs, that passes on to lower lot costs, which then pass on to lower home prices. That's basically the simple concept behind a municipal district.
So you're setting that up for approximately how many residences? It is for residents with some commercial, is that the way I understand?
Yes. Yes. So basically, the assessed value will be based on any commercial property that's within the boundaries of the MUD, with any residential homes within the boundaries of the MUD. That creates the assessed value, and based on that assessed value, bonds are floated and paid for through assessments by the people in that district. So nobody within the city of Langston will be paying for the infrastructure for the 385 acres.
Doesn't it really just establish a taxing district?
What's that?
Doesn't it really just establish a taxing district? You're
Well,
taxing the residents.
yes.
Yeah.
Where will the water come from?
Currently, there is an existing water line that borders the property, a portion of the property on State Highway 281 and a portion of Route 32. So what we would be doing is the district would be entering into the wholesale water agreement with the city of Blanco for water.
Water from the Canyon Lake pipeline.
It's a distribution line that currently utilized by the city of Blanco, but it's where the Canyon Lake line is.
Yeah, but it's water from Canyon Lake.
No,
So you're going to use Blanco water.
Mhm. Those customers will be added to our water supply as well.
So
Wastewater?
Wastewater, we're working with the city to see if there's a way to extend wastewater service to the boundary of the property.
So I noticed that you're talking about over 1,000 residences. Is that correct?
Yes, right now.
Yeah.
I think it probably end up being a little less than that.
Like factor of 10 maybe? That's a huge project. It goes against every planning thing that we've talked about here in putting small lots out away from the city. So I'm curious as to what the appeal is to the city.
The district would be building some infrastructure that's not within its boundary to extend infrastructure to it.
Like what?
Wastewater lines. Probably potentially upgrading some of the existing sewer infrastructure. And then, in addition, there could be some agreements that worked out between the city and the district with respect to the development agreements or strategic partnership agreements where there could be certain of the commercial property its sales tax could go back to the city since it's in the ETJ.
How many commercial,
Um,
how many split up? You're gonna have around 800 residents, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere, we pay somewhere between 800 and 1,000 homes. And then as far as commercial, I want to say they probably got close to 80 acres of commercial claim. Primarily on frontage of Ranch Road 32 and a little bit on 281.
What size of the lot's supposed to be?
They'll vary in sizes. Probably the smallest will be like a 40 or 45 foot. Could go up to half-acre lots because of some of the topo constraints on the property. So there'll be a mixed use.
But the city will have no input on the size of the lots or how they're in there, is that correct?
Yeah, they still have, they're in the UDC, the ETJ still has criteria for minimum 7,500 square foot lots and, the other designs.
What about the trees?
Still the same thing.
Well, quick for Ronnie, will our wastewater system, I know we've upgraded, how much more can it?
Probably just that.
Just that, yeah.
I mean, the projected numbers, that's the thing too, as far as full build out being 3 to 5 years, 3 to 10 years and such. Essentially, that's what we would be looking for with the kind of this utility district, wherever it comes from there, selling off or charging for sewer or sewer attached to that matter to expand our infrastructure as it stands currently.
So we would need to keep continuing to expand.
So by expansion, that means at some point, we're not there yet, but at some point, we would have to have the full side of the clarifier. And that's something we can incorporate into the cost of the future developments.
So if we go ahead and do this, does that limit what we can do offer within the city limits as far as the sewer treatment plant?
So,
Well, sure, it cuts into the capacity.
Well, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it eliminates it.
It gets into the capacity, would limit you to the point of depending on how fast to build out. Once the current water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plants reach about 75% capacity, we should be in the design phase for future expansion. This will definitely get us there quicker, but without knowing exactly how many homes are going to be built per year, whatever the use from there, it'd be a hard number to tell.
And come up here, and we need to be able to hear you.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear it.
Okay, let me mark this one.
Well, don't let it.
I'll stay.
Are these like, this layout that you have here, is this basically what you're looking at doing out?
It's just a very preliminary concept plan. We used it basically as a guide to come up with our potential infrastructure costs for that project.
Okay. And, you have any areas of open space, that type of thing, I'm looking at this way down here, it's not that big here.
Yes, we'll be meeting the city's park requirements and that, park improvements and park requirements.
But what you show here, this one,
Yeah, very preliminary. We haven't kind of taken the next step, which would be start, better define where our streets are going to go that up.
So I have a question about the ETJ, going back to what you were talking about. Well, so our zoning will just apply to that portion of this development that's going to be in the ETJ, or doesn't the ETJ have to be incorporated into the subdivision? Because I was reading in the UDC and it wasn't clear on what happens when you've got only a portion of it in the ETJ.
I don't know, I understand what you're asking about incorporating into the subdivision.
Well, I was reading the meets and bounds, and it says a portion of the property is in the ETJ and the rest is in the county. So I'm wondering about our input. Does it only apply to the section that's in the ETJ, the input as far as?
No, it'd be encompassing of the entire community. It'd be in our ETJ.
So will that?
I think all of that is actually in the ETJ health department.
Okay,
As the subdivision as a whole will all fall into the PDD, which will be part of the ETJ.
Wait a minute, you said PDD.
PDD.
I haven't heard anything about a PDD.
Eventually, there'll have to be a PDD or development agreement before fully developing the project. And that'll be something that come here as well,
So why do a MUD then,
Yeah.
now?
this is what I'm,
because it has to do with the infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, the city can't do the infrastructure. City's not gonna, ain't no way the city can do the infrastructure. This is a way that keeps the city, allows the city to make a modest income off of it, yet not have to invest into establishing it into the actual infrastructure itself.
Okay, so I just need to make sure I understand what we're talking about tonight. I'm a little slow. I'm a little older than I am. Okay, so tonight, the only thing we're doing is we're going to look at the mud issue and that you're going to do septic infrastructure at the first point. Are you gonna set it up for the whole thing?
Yes, we
So
would,
you're gonna line out all of the water and the sewer and electricity and things, some other stuff in here, is that correct?
that's correct.
And then you get someone else to come in and do the development, is that not correct?
Well, yeah, there'll be another development group coming in, but that development still has to adhere to the city of Blanco's development standards.
Okay, so, but you're gonna set up the water.
Our hope is that, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval to city council of a MUD for this property, which will allow us the ability to go out and construct infrastructure associated only with this property and extending water and wastewater lines, as well as making any necessary improvements to the city's water and wastewater infrastructure as a result of this project, coming on.
So you will assist the city in making any improvements that they need to make?
Yeah, so for example, if the line they need to tie into the 4-inch line and it can't handle that kind of volume, it needs to be an 8-inch line, they will help in that, getting that done, upgrading that infrastructure.
Help or do it?
I will soon do it.
Yeah, we would do it.
I ain't putting words in his mouth. He stepped up, and said, yeah, we got that.
Right.
But, no, it's all about upgrading the infrastructure as it pertains to their needs as a subdivision and not burdening the city with the cost.
So in other words, if our development triggered the next phase of design or whatever, then the district would be on the hook for paying for that on behalf of the city. Okay, because we're the ones that are triggering the increase in capacity and requirements. Okay, it's not the city funding that, it's the district funding.
Yeah, but as long as the upgraded plant had capacity, you could take all that and then there'd be nothing left for the city.
Well, but as.
As long as you didn't exceed the capacity.
Right, but all TCEQ requires, correct me if I'm wrong, that before the city or any municipality gets capacity, they have to start doing certain things at earlier stage. I believe that it's somewhere between 75%, 75%. That's when design will start getting triggered. And then at that point, once design is approved, then it goes into construction before you get your 100% capacity.
Yeah.
Once you have financial ability to do that. I mean,
That's really fast, that's where they'll.
That's where we help participate in that cost.
And the same thing with the sewer system.
Yes.
Okay, so in the water, do you do any kind of purification or anything for the whatever water you're getting, or is that still gonna be on city? Because in the summertime, our water is not good right now. Right? Got a new water system, but
Any improvements to keep the water potable, okay, because basically my understanding is we would just enter into a water supply agreement with the city of Blanco to provide water to this development, okay, through the mud. To the extent that any improvements need to be made, to that, if there's water impurities, whatever, then whatever, we would look at helping out in that regard with the city.
Right now, we don't know if any improvements that need to be made, but other than our water plant, which will solve a lot of our issues. Which is hopefully short.
Hopefully next year will be better than it was this past year. So
Right.
the past year wasn't good.
Yeah, just keep in mind, we're not going to drop, they're not going to be able to drop down 1,100 homes or 900 homes or even 100 homes overnight. This is an ongoing development.
For 10-year period or thereabouts.
Yeah,
In a perfect world, it would be free, I'm sure for them, but financially, but I think the reality is closer to that.
Okay, so how much water do you think that this flood district is going to use? I think someone told me we had like 385 acres of water, is that right?
I'm sorry?
How much water do we have available?
600.
1,200 acre feet
1,200 acres.
for the year of raw water.
Okay, so how much is this mud district going to use? What is your projection for that?
Know that off the top of my head.
What's an acre feet in gallons?
325, 851.
So their thing with 1,000 lots, 200 gallons a day for people, it's going to use 200,000 gallons a day.
Well, currently the city right now, we're having, so we've got 1,000,
A little over 1,100.
a little over 1,100 connections that are utilizing about 385,000 gallons a day.
So it's going to be an equivalent amount.
Right.
It's just like the thing Rock and Jay sneaked through the water district where they pumped enough water, they could pump enough water out of the ground more than the city of Blanco uses in a year. This is a similar sized development. It's going to totally use up the capacity of water. It's going to double the water usage.
Is there any limit to how much water you can use once you're connected? Or is it?
That, we,
Not only their water restrictions.
right. Only, that could be manipulated in the agreement that we have for water contractors such as servicing.
I had another clarification. We talked about zoning and extending out into this. Zoning does not apply in the ETJ. The only thing it applies is subdivision restrictions. So
Right.
nothing on lot sizes or anything like
Well, but they're gonna
that.
have PDD.
Well,
If you had a PDD,
We'll have
But-
to have that.
The ETJ does address minimum lot.
it does, but it doesn't take in, it does not take in the zoning.
No,
Yeah.
no, it does not include zoning. It's whether you do commercial, residential, whatever, it's not.
Yeah,
included.
It's not. The only thing applies is the subdivision
That's correct.
restrictions. And I still am curious. Hey, I understand the financing mechanism. It's a cheaper way for developers to get financing. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good for us. I do not see the benefit to the city of having the mud right out there. This is exactly what you see in developments around Dripping Springs. I don't know how many of those monster developments are muds, but I suspect some of them are. And it's just a way to build a monstrous, closely packed development without risking any money. It's a financing mechanism for the developer.
Well,
I don't like it. I don't see a reason for it here. And I will not vote to approve it.
Let me ask you, RP, just as a point of reference, is your opposition to the mud itself and as far as being financed or to the subdivision?
The mud is the camel and nose under the tent. That's just the way to get it
I was
started.
asking for the clarification. Is it
I object to the whole thing, but I
Okay.
object to this mechanism to begin with.
well,
But we have no control over the whole thing. But we do have control over this.
Well, we do a little bit, because they still gotta follow the design of the property, you still gotta come to P&Z.
It's,
And we still have to create a PDD, right? So we get what we want for that, hopefully.
To an extent.
Do we still have the same authority since it's in the county as we would as if it were in the city? That's a
ETJ,
question.
as far as the design criteria, yes.
So
no,
that, yeah, I was gonna say that.
that's it.
so basically all of our plats, construction plans would have to go before the city for approval. As we phase develop the property.
Tell me again why the city should do this.
What's the benefit to the city? What is that?
Well, number one, I think is affordable housing.
No, don't use that word.
So, and what is the general cost of the cost of homes?
Well, I would say that on average, homes in MUDs typically are 20 to 40% less than homes that are not in MUDs.
But I mean, are these gonna be $200,000 homes or $500,000
I
homes?
would say they would range based on varying lot sizes. But yeah, I would say we would probably have entry level homes probably in the upper 100s starting. And you could see homes going into the $500,000 range on, 80 or half acre lots.
So MUD does not affect the cost of building, does not affect the cost of the land. It only spreads out the infrastructure cost to the future residents in a perpetual tax. That's all it does.
Just like a homeowners association.
Yeah. So you're going to stick it to them like you did to Cielo and water?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
We can stick to them.
Oh, yeah,
So we can have that conversation offline if you like.
we can.
Okay, so let me, online, let's talk about the sewer system. And I know it's doing better. Are we going to be able to handle, I mean, what do we have, like, how many residents now in Lincoln that hooked up to our water and sewer?
We have right under 900 sewer connections currently.
900, okay. And now we're gonna add another 1,000. So we're gonna double the sewer, which means we're gonna double the water.
Yeah.
We're gonna double the infrastructure, is that correct? What about drainage? You've got to talk about drainage, how it's gonna work, if you.
All we do.
It'll be all dealt with on site. We have a planned detention pond that will hold the water and, release it in its natural condition.
Something that's large will only be one home?
There'll be two, there'll be one on the north side of the property and then another on the east side.
What was that question? What was that question? Please, I couldn't.
Drainage.
Okay, thank you.
Water retention, and there'll also be a plan for 210 reuse, so we can reuse our fluid from the water plant, from the sewer plant to utilizing sprinkler and open spaces and managing the park, and hopefully there would be a future plan of carrying that all the way to Rocky J.
And that could also be a benefit to the city as well, for some reuse water.
How much would that be used?
Huh?
How much approximately would we be using all of it?
I don't know. We would definitely reuse what they generate, not all of what we have now.
I mean, of what they get.
But what they generate, we could probably use all of what they generate.
How would that happen?
Through 210, through watering, through.
Where?
All their green space, it can be incorporated into their.
You mean within the development?
Within the development,
Okay.
yes.
I don't see any open land here.
Wastewater at all?
Yes, it goes through.
That's not part of it.
It'll be treated, sent back to.
No, maybe it is.
The 210 is.
What hell is all over? Because this will be here. Yeah.
Are you going to do anything with this sewage before it gets to our plant? Are you gonna do anything there? Did you?
No.
No, it just goes in the pipe and goes on through.
We'll have to construct a large lift station on the property, then force it through.
You won't process it, you won't kind of clean it or anything like that.
So to reuse it, we got to ship it to the shipment plant and ship it back out.
Right, right. What
And
about,
you're responsible for all those lines.
Yes.
And
Will you be, no, you can mind, just answer my question. Okay. This is the biggest plan I've gotten. Since the first presentation, I've been asking to see some sort of a plat. So if it's gonna be a TDD, we have a lot of requirements. But if you're dealing with infrastructure, is that gonna include roads and sidewalks too, or is that gonna be a separate type of infrastructure issue?
No, the assessments would cover water, wastewater, drainage, and
And-
roads.
That's what could, that's what I thought.
As well as, depending on capacity, if there's enough assessed value, we would look at also doing some community parks and street improvements and that type of thing.
and you're doing roads, sidewalks, the whole deal, right?
Correct.
And are you all responsible for the upkeep of that?
Yes.
Or the city?
No.
That is, right?
Through the mud, they tax the
Through the
residents.
bond and through the HOA.
But when you did the presentation, I asked if these would be open to the city, and I was told, no, they're private. It would just be for the residents here. The city, the parks and stuff would be just for the residents here. And I was that, maybe I misunderstood, but
That's probably true.
just curious. I'm just trying to make sure what I heard at the presentation, how much, if there's anything that's changed. So, and I guess my other question is I know my other question is, how many exits onto roads do you have? I can't tell from here.
Just two. They're both right now on Ranch Road 32. They've been approved by Texas.
So there'll be 1,000 houses entering just 2 exits and entrances onto the highways.
Yes.
To an intersection that only has a promised stoplight that's never coming.
Right, and there's no emergency exits out the back or anything else? No
Well,
fire?
The two primary points of ingress and egress will be Ranch Road 32. But then there'll be also some smaller points of ingress and egress along Linden Lane.
Surely you will be having much come out on 281.
Oh, there'll be nothing on 281. They all come to Ranch Road 32 first, and then there'll be.
We already have one probably in traffic supply, and there's a field on that place. Do we get something done?
Let me get something clear. That's because I don't understand. All we're talking about is city agreeing to a MUD. What would cause a PDD to come into effect?
The development plan, going to the next step.
City can't require PDD outside the city limits,
They can, according to our UDC, they can.
outside the city limits, in the ETJ. But I don't believe but a third of this property is in the ETJ.
Yeah, I was looking at the meets and bounds, but see, if I had a flat plan, we could see exactly where the ETJ property was, but it's not, it doesn't state here.
My understanding is this entire tract remains in the city.
What was that?
My understanding is that this entire tract is in the city's.
Okay. I did not understand that.
That's what I saw here, when I read it. Okay, so, if I understand this right, if we say yes, we think this note is good, if we said that, what we're saying is we can almost double our water and our sewer systems. And I don't know about the utility part, and the drainage is another issue. And if we wanted the city of Blanco to grow, if we allow this mud to grow, we've got a lot of upgrading that we're gonna have to do to be able to provide for the citizens of Blanco. So tell me again why this is good for the city.
The MUD would participate with the city in growing the city's water and wastewater treatment plants. And related. So it's not a burden, it's not a burden on the city.
Help us with building additional water and sewer plant.
Need to. Yes.
Maybe.
For them to consent.
There's no
Maybe.
requirement.
Somebody tell me,
Unless they exceeded that 75% level. No requirement for them to participate any further.
Those studies will be done before then, so we'll know what our projection is. Is it going to exceed?
So why don't we wait on approval of a MUD till we understand the development better and the capacities?
Do you have any examples of bugs when they've been used?
Oh, yeah, they've been used extensively in the state of Texas. I don't know, there's probably close to 2,000 bugs in the state of Texas.
and Austin, yeah,
Austin, Houston is noted for muds, that's
Laverne,
the word that has
They're
one.
not sanitary?
Yes. They have just down the road, Johnson Ranch, in our work community, that is a mud.
what's the other one out on 46, 309? What's the name of that big subdivision?
Meyer Ranch.
Meyer Ranch.
Ranch is.
You said Johnson, 1 inch of them. I'm familiar with that.
So if you,
And just so you know, just go back and reiterate, the developer has to advance these costs. It's not like the district is fronting any of this, okay? The district doesn't do anything until there's enough assessed value on that within the district boundary to be able to float bonds. Typically, the size of those bonds that get floated, once the value is created, and as long as there's the development is progressing, okay? The typical size of those bonds are somewhere around $3 million is typical size of a bond that goes out and then reimburses the developer. But the developer is advancing all these costs on the front end, so there's risk. If the project stalls, okay, which means there's no more new assessed value being created, then the developer is still on the hook for whatever he's done, okay? He's not getting reimbursed for that. Yeah, I just wanted to.
So you can just walk off and leave it wherever you stop, happen to stop.
No, it wouldn't be left. In other words, what I'm saying is that whatever bonds have been floated on this district, there's enough assessed value to support those assessments associated with those bonds. Okay, so to the extent, let's say we get to 300 or 400 homes, we haven't hit, we're halfway through and things slow down, okay? And the developer has already started his next unit, okay? And then there's a softening in the market. Okay, the developer's still out there, waiting to be reimbursed for that until there's enough new assessments to reimburse the developer. So the developer is always behind it. It's not where the district is advancing bonds, like a PID, for example. A PID, you can go,
I read up on some of that too.
Yeah.
So
That's the big
have to be
difference.
rock and jet. That's a big.
It's good. Yeah. So what they did is they went out and they put an assessment on the entire property, okay? And then, before the infrastructure was put in, and then used those bonds to pay for that infrastructure. The MUD works differently. The initial investment is made by the developer. Once there's adequate assessed value on the property, then bonds are floated to reimburse the developer. So the developer is always behind.
How long before the developer anticipates?
Typically, it'll
Forward,
uh,
30 years?
the bonds are typically set up for 20 to 30-year periods. So, the developer will probably get, somewhere in year 18 to 20 is probably when he's recovered his investment in the infrastructure.
In comparison to some of the other MUDs that are in and around this area, what size is this compared to theirs? Is this larger, smaller, medium? What would you say?
No, it's on par. Typically, MUDs are about between 300 and 500. Anything less than that, then you start running into assessed value. There's not enough assessed value necessarily to cover the improvements, and then their tax rates go up. And we have a cap on the tax rates by the state. The state does use that.
Yeah, the ECJs are on board.
But in the petition, and I just pulled the petition up, it says that a portion of the ETJ is included in it. It doesn't say the whole thing. It said a portion of the ETJ is included, 385 acres. It's in your, it's in your petition. Did you get the petition?
Half a mile goes, and it's encompassing probably 3/4 of it.
3/4 of it in HJ.
Okay.
In the UDC, it states that the owners have to be willing to be voluntarily annexed into the system. So our ETJ would no longer be an ETJ, right? It would just be part of the system.
The MUD would stay still outside boundaries of the state.
Yeah, they're not asking to be annexed.
Because if we were asking for annexation, then the city would be under an obligation to extend infrastructure that we would annex the annexation. So in other words, if we came in and said we wanted to be voluntarily annexed into the city of Blanco, then it'd be a scramble on water and wastewater infrastructure.
But when the MUD is up and running, I'm real on one of these, where once it is up and running, that it could be incorporated into the city. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it would be upon either the bonds being fully repaid by the people within the district paid on, or the city could step in and take on the obligation of those funds.
So is it correct that if it were annexed into the city, you'd lose your taxing power in the MUD? It would fall into the city's taxing power instead. So you'd be passing the burden off. So it's not going to be annexed,
It's not gonna work.
not going to be annexed.
Well, I know that I have not heard enough information that tells me, this is just me, tells me that this is going to be good for the city of Latham. Now, I may be wrong with that, and so that's why I'm open for more discussion or whatever everybody else thinks. I mean, I don't see it as a plus plus. But like, I see it as a plus plus if we want to become Austin, which I don't think we do. I see it as a plus plus if we want to become a larger city, but I don't see it as a plus plus for the citizens that we have in Blanco and what we're doing with our water and our sewer systems. That's just me. So I'm throwing it out there if she would like to hear something from somebody else. Right?
Well, I agree. It doesn't fit what we've been talking about on the lot, or
The sheer amount of lots, and then, I mean, the commercial is, I get the idea, but it's not necessarily what we've been aiming for in the whole zoning. One,
That's what we saw in the update on the comprehensive master plan. I didn't see any of this growth that was initiated that the citizens wanted. Did you?
no, but that was more of, what was that movie marked out over there? Anyway, so yeah, we actually marked that up next to it as industrial, which would know what we're going for. But that, one other thing on this as development is a lot of times I'll see them where they have either schools or things like that. I don't know what the capacity of our schools are, and what the additional capacity they can take on. But I don't know if there'll be any spots slated for an elementary school to go in there, and things like that.
There is, we've been asked to reach out to the school district about setting aside 20 to 30 acres for elementaries and or potentially.
Within the mud,
Yes,
would it take up your open space?
no. What we probably trade off in exchange for that would be some type of potential retail or commercial.
Have you had any discussions with traffic, the highway department, and that kind of thing?
Preliminary only to get our driveway permits approved on Metro 32. But we would be required, because of the size of the development, to do a transportation impact study on that property. So that if there was any improvements needed, either to Ranch Road 32, State Highway 281, or the intersection of Ranch Road 32 and 281, that would be part of our study. Yeah.
And you have all the easements that you need for all the infrastructure. You already have those obtained.
The easements I would need to procure would be to go and get the off-site sanitary sewer easements. More than likely, it looks like the easiest way would be to go down, 163 and down that way. So we have to come through the west side of the property, come into State Highway, I guess, or Loop 163, and then 163 north.
Crossing
To
the
an
river somewhere.
existing main.
Crossing the river somewhere.
And an existing river point and line crossing.
You put another line in somehow.
Upgrade the size if necessary.
Who would do that? Whose cost is that?
Mr. Sparrow, what kind of commercial were you thinking of having? It looks like it's going to be strict zoning, a strict development, more like stores lining the highway, correct? Is that what it looks like from here?
Yes,
Do you have any potential candidates yet?
no.
How intense a commercial use were you going to allow?
I think what's reflected on there probably was too much commercial and retail for what this area needs at this time. So I think we would probably reduce the number of acres that's reflected on there.
But is it true the city would have no input on that?
What's that?
How much you did commercial, what kind, anything.
Well, I mean, through the development agreement that we would negotiate with the city.
So if you did development agreement, PDD, is that what that is for
Yeah.
that thing?
Virtually, yeah.
Not virtually, is it the
They're two
PDD?
different documents, but they serve the same purpose.
And who approves those documents? City council?
Here in the council.
So after the mud is, moved, if planning and zoning elects to move forward with the mud, the next step would be, and it goes before it gets granted or consented to by the city council, the next step would be to negotiate a development agreement with the city of Blanco on how all this will work.
Well, what if you decided you didn't want to do a development agreement?
Well, I think we would need to enter into a development agreement for utilities. And at that point, then the city can ask for certain, probably negotiating with myself, the city can probably ask for certain development restrictions on
The city does have a negotiating point with supply of water and taking the sewage.
And drainage?
And
There's no negotiating on that, it just is what it is. Unless, if you get into PDD, you probably do that.
and the sale of reclaimed water. Also, okay.
And the drainage will be all established by our engineers, our site, planning engineers. That's all going to be, for the most part, out of our hands. That goes through our engineering. He holds them to a certain criteria on the drainage, especially the retention.
And then again, the city can see through a strategic partnership agreement, sales tax. Okay. So to the extent that we are able to, obtain a commercial or retail end user, then any sales tax generated, that can be negotiated as part of the strategic partnership.
But that's a negotiated thing. Otherwise, it would go to the mill.
Well, a portion of it would go, but yeah, 100% would go to the mud. So instead of 100% would be, I think normally it's 50-50. So 50% of the sales tax revenue generated within the district boundaries goes to the city.
So I think I read somewhere in here, I read lots of, that once the bonds are paid off, then you would still tax the mud residences or properties. And then that could be put to whatever else the mud itself, because they will have their own directors.
Correct.
And they could do with that whatever they wanted to do with it.
Basically, there's an assessment for repaying the bonds, then there's an O and M. Okay, so there's two assessments that make up the full assessment. So after the bonds are paid off, what would remain would be the operation and maintenance assessment. And that obviously just goes to pay for, the operations and maintenance associated with the infrastructure. If there's any rec center improvements, those types of things.
Who operates the mud?
What's that?
Their
Who
directors.
operates the mud?
It'd be operated by a board.
Board of what?
Uh,
Residents,
Yes.
developers,
Within the district.
elected, appointed?
Initially appointed and then elected.
So think of it as a city that's not a city. Just give them taxing authority to do whatever they want to do. And initially, it's totally out of control of everybody who lives there until they have an elected board. It's like a homeowners association, but it's a tax. It's not an assessment, taxing authority. You can raise the tax rate. So that has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Well, to the extent we can't raise tax rate over what our statutory.
Yeah, that's how everybody's got a limit.
Okay, can we get Ronnie up here for a second?
Absolutely. Sure.
You got the guys going, what's going on?
I want you to tell me how this benefits the city. I want this from your standpoint.
How this benefits the city?
Yes.
Oh, gosh. Well, I mean, I know there's examples of ways it can benefit the city with the wholesale agreements
You have to put up the
to purchase water, and the city will get the water sales from there. It was my understanding that we have the ability to voluntarily annex after the bonds were paid off, and we would I guess, increase our tax acidity out there on the 385. Taking over the infrastructure, once it's paid over, or once it's paid off. From there, actually, once the bonds are paid, it's my understanding, it's one, correct if I'm wrong, any of this. Then we can agree to not continue the wholesale agreement. And we can charge their customers water as we do a regular customer in town.
About 1.5% instead of.
It'd be 1.5 times out there in that area. With meter fees and such from there.
So a wholesale water agreement is much cheaper than the residents here would pay.
Yes.
So why do we not sell them at cost the citizens pay?
Well, that'd be something that would be, I guess, discussed in a PDU development agreement. Which, like I said, is.
Basically, this brings no revenue to the city other than whatever cost sharing things are worked out. Because the pie in the sky annexation in 20 years, don't count on that because who knows what happens in 20 years.
We still get revenue.
You get at some low fraction of what we charge our own citizens.
We get to establish that, but we get to establish that without the required maintenance of those lines.
Yeah, yeah.
So we don't have the cost associated with it. So while it may be a lower rate of profit, it's not going to be eaten up by constantly replacing meters or this.
Yeah.
Even our guys, we have 1 meter to read.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a 2-day process as it is now.
What's that?
Meter reading.
2.5, yes.
And that's man hours across the city. So a wholesale deal may not make us the same money that we make off the water now, but there is no cost to selling that water.
So we would never have to do anything with those pipes.
Not as long as they don't belong to us.
So that's exactly what I'm thinking, not as long as they don't belong to us. So you don't know, I mean, the anticipation is, according to what I read on these notes, that after the bonds are paid off, the city likes to, or many cities incorporate those into their city. Then we have to take care of the pipes, is that right?
If we, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But
I believe that we so choose as well.
that's purely our choice. Now, if you want to talk to CLO, somewhere along the way, someone said that was a good idea, the for infrastructure that was put in.
The city made a mistake in doing it,
And accepting it.
and now they don't want to pay for it.
But actually, the city has been paying for it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
But the city made a bad deal to settle a lawsuit with Roper.
Mhm. Nonetheless, in our minds now, we have a ticker.
So
So that really is not bearing on this issue.
No, it's just using
this
an
is
analogy.
the idea of the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So we would play a role in making sure that this infrastructure is put in correctly to start with. It doesn't mean you're still going to have aging infrastructure. You're still going to have issues, but that's going to be.
I won't be here.
True, you know,
I might have 15 more years.
My concern is that once the PDP, once we're done with PDP, we've lost control for 15, 20 years, right? I mean,
essentially,
essentially, and
without input, but control, yeah, probably.
Well, just to be clear, there's still, every time we submit a plat for a new phase of development and plans, it still has to come and go through the city process. We just have to adhere to whatever development agreements like PPD, as long as we're in there, operate under that. When you set a plan.
So you can have several PDDs inside this.
Well, that'd be development.
We just do one development agreement, just in multiple phases. And then underneath that development, obviously there'll be multiple phases being submitted under that development agreement.
I'm just afraid of what happened in the previous one. But part of what happened was they relinquished control. They wanted no growth at all, so these people came in and did it.
Well, that's the alternative.
Yeah.
Is that you get another Rock and J,
Yeah.
you get 10 other Rock and you at least have some input in this. But the bottom line is, as far as infrastructure is concerned, it's gonna happen one way or another. City can't afford to extend any infrastructure.
Part of my problem, and it's not with the mud, but the mud is the beginning, is the concept of a densely developed park on the edge of the city. That makes no planning sense. And the mud is a way for them to do it. Probably couldn't do it otherwise. And so, we do this, then it's going to happen. I think it's wrong, the concept.
Well, the other thing is if we do this, then nobody else has any ability right now to build an add-on for a while, correct?
No, it's not true. Anybody that want to build or develop will be responsible for additional costs to develop.
Right, but if this is gonna double what we're now doing, we really won't have a lot of flexibility for other developments to come in. I mean, I'm gonna have to wrap my head around this, forget
Well,
it.
let me see if I can help a little.
Please do.
When we come in and we size this project, okay, we know how much water we're going to need, we know how much wastewater capacity we're going to need as well over the life of the project. Okay, when the city comes and does their design, right, if I'm wrong, running, but my experience has been that they typically design, for example, they'll look at a 50,000 gallon per day wastewater treatment plant rather than just whatever I need for our project. So there's always going to be available capacity, okay, for other projects to tie into the system. That's just the way the design works. You don't design for what you need for that specific project. You design for more than you need.
So
in anticipation of that potential growth.
So our plant could quadruple in size. It's gonna take a bullseye each time it quadruples or doubles. But it can quadruple, it's already set up to quadruple in size. We just add another bullseye that doubles our capacity
That's for wastewater treatment you're talking
for
about.
wastewater.
Where are you going to get the extra water?
Eventually we'll have to probably either create another reservoir or get more capacity from Canyon Lake.
And in the future, where does wastewater go? I mean, we're already having an issue.
We haven't put in anything in the river since October of last year, and it's being reused, and now we're looking to sell.
But we know that,
But we're looking, this is a good property to be able to distribute that reused water, and ultimately, this is a link in the chain that we'd like to get to Rock and J to be able to sprinkle their golf course and their place, so they're not using well water. Take an aquifer well water there. And any other developments that come along the way. We're looking at any new developments to have some facets of development of size, the 22 doesn't count. But any of size to have some facet of 210 reuse, so that we can get purple pipe back to that subdivision and also have them help pay for it, so that we can be turning our water back into the ground.
how much further was Rocking J down the road? How much further?
What was it, about 1,000 yards across the road or so?
Yes.
Or across the road?
I would say
It's not very far.
their treatment plant is probably half a mile.
Yeah. So,
It's up on the hill up there.
yeah. And then there's another proposed subdivision in between Rock and J that is proposed to come, that's not in our ETJ.
But you're not gonna have a treatment plant in the mud, right?
That's not our plan right now. Our plan is to try to work with the city.
If we're gonna send it here, then we're gonna send all of our waste, right? Not just there.
As much as I can tell
As
you.
much as they can use. Yeah, but I mean, it won't be returning there.
No, not there.
We'll have.
We'll have the ability, and that goes for any other, infrastructure that we have. We'll have the ability with the secondary distribution system and process all that and send it whichever way.
I like that.
Yeah, I can conceive of the wastewater part working out. The water's a bigger issue. It's the most precious resource in Central Texas right now.
And
That the Blanco River can't just keep supplying twice as many people as it does. I don't see this kind of development demands too much water.
yes. This growth is gonna occur. It's gonna occur.
It's not if they can't get water, it's not.
Oh, they drill their own well.
Yeah. And this aquifer here is not real plentiful.
No, it's not that, I'd rather than not drill wells. and take the
Yeah.
rock from
And what does TCQ allow? I mean, are they
it.
gonna,
Groundwater district for a well.
yeah, I mean, are they gonna just say, oh, okay, fine, or?
Yes, they did to Rocking Bed. They said, okay, take as much as you want.
They need all the criteria.
Morris, haven't heard anything from you. What do you think?
I'm gonna excuse me. I'd look at it a little bit more. But I'm kind of like you. Okay, the water thing, I'm thinking 20 years ago, we didn't have that water coming from Canyon Lake, the river. They're talking about bringing water in.
And that drought will happen again.
Is Canyon Lake fed by the Guadalupe?
Yes.
Well, folks,
Again,
If I may, with respect to water, these are things that, as far as what's happening required for water to not only serve the existing city of Blanco, the city of Blanco's future growth, as well as the 385, all gets looked at and taken into consideration, as part of that. So we're here to help with solutions, not create problems.
You can't create water.
but, so the argument is, or the question is a approval or disapproval of the mud, not approval or disapproval of the subdivision. It's morally opposed to the subdivision is different than the mud.
we want to,
Being morally opposed to subdivision is different from being morally opposed to mud, one of the two. So we're talking about the mud,
how is that fireman not interrelated?
because the subdivision can go on without us. They could put in their own infrastructure and not use city water or use city sewer system.
So where do they get the water?
Well,
Huh?
well, they could do just like Rock and J. And the subdivision that's gonna go across the street can do the same thing. And the subdivision that's gonna go a little bit further down 32 can do the same thing. So, I mean, we can argue all we want to about growth. Growth is gonna happen one way or another.
So
If I'm not mistaken, several years ago, we tried drilling wells here,
Right.
and we were unsuccessful.
Very.
Just a problem.
They started doing wells in 1996, the city of Blanco paid for a series of 6 wells to be drilled. And 3 of which were under the influence of the Guadalupe River that were still non-produced.
So we may not be developing the drill well.
We can't find water when we do it, but hopefully somebody else can.
I don't know. I don't think that. But
Then there's, I mean, I know Rock and J use a third of their capacity of their well now, so they, someone we tap into, maybe start to deal with them to supply their subdivision too.
they would be unlikely to do that if they ever hope to build out. They would do it on a temporary basis, maybe.
Point is,
You can,
long as time,
you can find ways to get water, most of which are bad.
not disagree.
And even if you could find your own water, what are you gonna do with your sewage?
then we could go to a larger size lot and just do septic. Which is, I don't think a good option, in my opinion.
It's not a financially good option for the
What's that?
developer. It's not a financially good option for the developer.
Well,
It's actual better development option for this part of the country, larger lots.
And septic systems.
If they're large enough lots, yeah. Septic systems work fine on a 2 acre lot.
well, what about half acre lot,
No,
or 6 acre, or 6/10 of an acre lot?
but out in these areas, that's what we should be talking about. Nothing less than 2. In an arid, semi-arid region where water's precious, where infrastructure is expensive, yeah, that's what these developments ought to be. But again, this is getting into the opposite to the development as opposed to the mud. Yeah, my bottom line is I don't see the benefit to the citizens of Blanco. It's going to double the use of our planned resources that we don't even have yet. So I would not approve the money.
Rachel, have I heard from you?
Well, I mean, I agree with the water is concerning, but like, also think that growth is here and that, I mean, the infrastructure and the city not being able to afford it, it's kind of like, maybe we should consider it because of, the growth. I mean, it's, I don't know. It's just, I mean, because it's gonna be, that 8 to 10 years. And in 8 to 10 years, I mean, we know it's gonna be probably around this area.
Tricky Springs area, just a few.
So I understand like the concerns about water and stuff, but also, I mean, the future is coming up.
What about well, I guess they'll go to spring branch, groceries, all that stuff. It's a restaurant, you know. Well, I see that we can get infrastructure out there on that 385 acres. That will cost the city to do that. And for that, we'll have to have a huge development at the south end of town. And water is going to be a problem. I think that hopefully it would help us with the sewer problem that we have. Water concerns me, but I guess going forward, that's going to concern us anywhere we go. Am I wrong?
Like they said, the development will happen regardless, whether you want to have hands in it or not.
So, council? Commissioners, I have a motion. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Do we have to make a decision?
No, we
Sooner or later.
Tonight, we're gonna have to do it another time. I mean, I don't know that we're going to get any additional information at this point, because he's given us everything that we've asked him for. He's answered our questions. And so now we have to make a determination, in my mind, is this the best thing to later? But no matter what I think, no matter what I desire, we have to think, is this the best thing for the citizens of Mako? And we've talked a long time about long term. We can't make this decision on what's going to happen 2 or 5 years from now. We have to look at 10, 15, or 20 years from now. We just went through that long progress of looking at the comprehensive master plan. And that's a long-term, very long-term plan. And so do we want to not have to pay for the infrastructure that deal with the other issues that are going to come up, and the biggest one would be one. And the citizens, do they really, I guess there'll be something at city council where they'll have a public hearing to see if the citizens want this at the end of town. I mean,
We have a
that's-
public hearing tonight.
I wonder. I was just thinking the same thing. Wouldn't we have had a public hearing?
Public hearing tonight.
Because they've already had the presentation on it. That was done, what, last fall, March? Was it March?
I think it was March.
Was there a public hearing at that time?
I don't recall. I have to go back and look.
I thought it was.
What was the form of that
It was over.
presentation? I'm not aware of it.
It was at a
I
city.
didn't even hear, I didn't even.
At a city council?
Oh, wasn't here.
I'm sure that UDC does not provide for whether you have a public hearing or not on the mud because it doesn't really talk about
And it's not even mentioned.
Yeah. But I would hope that at least city council would have one if it gets that far.
I believe growth is going to occur. What we have to do is look at North San Antonio to see that they pay absolutely no attention to water there, knowing that they built over their aquifer already years ago, 50 years ago, they've already built over their aquifer. Having some control in what goes on, because we will have a PDD eventually, makes it a lot easier for me to take. RK is right, so, we should be talking about much larger lots. I really like the idea of the reuse waste. That's kind of important to me.
Just, I would step in for 1 second. That's one of our biggest needs as a city right now.
Are we being sued or anything?
No, we're working with them. We got a meeting. For our fourth meeting.
So this is gonna come up for the city council next week. Are you going to have a public hearing before it comes up to the city council?
That is a public hearing. But I'll look and see. That's city secretary.
Yeah, but the public hearing is a separate thing on the agenda. It's not part of the
But
regular.
it's public hearing after the presentation.
Yeah. Nobody's going to say anything. I move that we do not forward this with a positive recommendation to city council.
And we do not want.
Do not forward this with a favorable recommendation to city council.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? I'm so iffy on this.
I'm pretty easy on it, so.
4, 7. So did it pass?
4 to 3. Well, you didn't ask for the nays, so it might be abstaining.
It was pretty obvious.
You might be abstaining.
So, how many agreed to the motion? That's what I was. 1, 2, 3.
Well, you voted for it too.
One minute.
You voted for it too, didn't you?
Yeah, I am, I would like to pass it to the council with the provision that they have a public hearing. However that happens, we have to have a public hearing when we hear from the citizens. Then
It doesn't appear to be an agenda.
Let's settle the vote first. We called for a vote. Let's have it.
How many nays, how many?
What's the risk of passing the budget and then going to the PDD? I mean, because all the mud is doing is just basically kind of getting utilities going.
My basic reason is draw on the resources, particularly water.
Yeah,
It's unacceptable.
but whether it comes from, whether they drill a well or whether it's pumped out of our lines, it's kind of all the same thing.
No, it didn't. Makes it much harder on them to do this. Makes it easier on them if we do the mud. I've again called for the vote.
Okay, so I forgot what the motion was.
Well, I kind of like the motion in the email. That we forward it to the council with stipulation that there is yes, public hearing, thank you. A public hearing and,
Stress the concern on the water. Stress the concern on the water.
yeah, that sounds.
Something like they won't get it. Did you get that? Will you, can we withdraw your motion and listen to what he has to say?
Listen to what he has to
Can we
say.
withdraw your motion and have Mike put another motion up?
You can amend the motion if you want. I called for a vote on my motion. It was seconded. Okay, then it was 4-3 against, or 4.
But unless, I mean, how do you cancel? Or can, I don't know.
Just withdraw your vote.
I'll withdraw my vote. I want to hear what Mike has to say.
I'm just saying,
Because until you say all in favor, aye, and all that stuff, and everyone says their point's not a final vote, there's always discussion after the motion is seconded.
Not after we call for the vote.
call for the vote.
She called for the vote. Vote has to be taken.
It's gonna go before council anyway.
One difference is if it doesn't come with a recommendation from P&Z, it takes 2/3 of city council. So it takes it's a harder thing. If it comes with a recommendation from P&Z, it's just the majority. I would rather the council think long and hard about this and make it harder to do. But that's my opinion.
So what we have is that you, 4 is against, 4 is against, is that right?
Against moving forward, no,
You did not call for the nays, you only called for the ayes. And Loris, Christine, and tentatively you
not move forward with the distance.
to not forward it with a favorable recommendation.
So how many nays? 1, 2, 3. Okay. So you got that? Rachel?
So the city council is free to do what they wish.
That's right. Hopefully they will have a public hearing. The next thing on our agenda is the revised layout plan. Are we good one?
They're not ready to present that. You don't really talk about single R.
Again, if
Do you have a layout?
you want to,
It's not ready for P&D talk yet. It's the revised layout. You wanted to
I
separate.
don't have a bunch of copies.
So this is an info session, there's no action.
I have to retake it.
What do you have? What do you have? Oh, let me go make a couple of copies.
What are we doing right now?
All we have on that is the original, map from 2 meetings ago, is that correct?
I think he has a new layout, I believe, right? He's just gonna talk to us tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're not seeking any action, we just wanted to get
Yeah.
your thoughts on,
Right.
I think we've addressed some of the concerns that we had last time.
So y'all have 2 subdivisions, basically, right?
Well, it's I represent another owner. I don't know what I for.
So are you a lawyer or what are you?
No,
Okay,
just a developer.
okay. Well, that's why you're representing both these groups, though.
Yeah.
It's unclear.
Get a handle.
We're glad you're here, because you answer our questions. We may not always like our decisions.
No, it's okay. I understand. The road has its challenges. I did that. Just one reference, I actually live in Fredericksburg, or just north of Fredericksburg. So a lot of the conversations that are taking place here, they encounter as well. You know, kind of like Blanco with respect to what we would call workforce housing. They have issues there.
No affordable housing here.
It's, and, you know, I represent another guy in the city that owns property. At that point. You can reach to that side.
Are we still getting access to the
Thank you,
water
Ron.
tower?
Yeah,
Of course, I don't know if I thought very much at all.
Thank you.
Citizens still access to the utility tower.
So for ease, if everybody has it kind of like that, what the water tower should be on the north side of your property. So basically the TCG is where you leave it. Your water tower will be on the north, and you'll see a street that's sub to it. The other concern or comments that we received was basically having more access, multiple access. We added another one in addition to before we just had one on the Mesquite. Now we have three, one on the Mesquite and two on Greenlawn. And the reason for the second one was we're having a challenge with trees on that property. And the other plan that I had, I believe I shared with you, was a cul-de-sac where we had a through street and then we had a cul-de-sac. But when we overlaid the tree survey on top of that, we were removing quite a few caliber inches of trees, and that's not what the property owner did not want to do. So what's before you is what we believe is the most efficient layout that we could come up with. The park we had discussed before, we were thinking it would be along Greenlawn, where you'll see a heavily shaded trees kind of on the south boundary up there. Initially, our thought was when we came in before, our park would be put there. But now what we've done is the center block. So if you can have your magnifying glass on, put it up there.
Oh, good.
Oh, good Lord.
So which is the top?
So
North?
the water tower.
Okay, so that's north over there.
Yeah, I was Persian. I didn't think so.
So initially, we had talked about this potentially being in the park because of the number of trees here. Now what we've done is we've actually encompassed this area, lots, a few lots, made this our park, and then lease lots would back up, you know, all in an effort to save trees.
So that's kind of nice, that the park is interior now, not exterior.
You know what the straight up?
So,
Where's north again?
Over that way to the left.
Okay, so,
And-
so this would be the Mesquite,
oh,
Okay.
okay,
Greenlawn,
okay, got it.
and 13.
And the water tower is where, tell me one more time, please? All right, thank you. Thanks.
And so the two exits are at the bottom, is it right?
Yeah, this would be Greenlawn here, and then and to the top of Mesquite.
I don't think I did much better than the last one. Does anybody else like that?
I wasn't here the last time, so I don't know.
The other one, that looks nice.
I see your plans here, but yeah.
You want to see the other one? Here's the old one.
Should we put this?
Here's the record.
Yeah. And this, how many lots you're developing now with homes?
Right now, I'm at 28. Before, I think our apartment is maybe close to 30.
Yeah.
So I lost some lots, but again, yes, I was trying to preserve trees and make it a nice community. And, incorporate this area as a part of it.
So how many trees are gonna be lost?
Well, we're doing that now, and that's why I want to have this conversation with you folks on this. There are 2 trees right here that are pretty significant. The right of way is right now, your current requirements under the R3, which is this property, is 50-foot right of way. We narrowed the right of way to try to minimize impact to trees. So in the PDB, I'm requesting one of the variances to be reduce the right of way from 50 to 40. Okay. So that's
purely a free perspective.
right.
I think it looks like some are gonna be taken down over here on the far.
Well, the ones that we're looking at right now are probably this tree here, up to, this one's here right in the center.
That one we proposed modifying the road into the park, going like that. See my cursor there? So we've taken out some of it's actually eating the park a couple of feet, and then we can make the road position to a little U around the tree. Until you get, and that was the last thing we talked about, Mark, until you have the actual width, he wasn't sure. He could be 40 foot there as well.
And then there's a little tree here. And I think this is what here is just tree cover. The actual trunks of the tree were off the right of way.
Right.
What's an actual street width? I mean, if you have a 50-foot right of way, how wide is the street
What is our
typically?
curve, John?
28.
28.
22, 24 for homes. We've got some of the town even as narrow as 18. But we do, it's overlay everything from there. We're looking at a minimum of 22, I believe.
But right now, our back of curb to back of curb would be 28. So 40 foot right of way.
Curb to curb is 28.
Curb to curb would be 28. Back of curb to back. That's the thing about the tree.
Russell,
What's this?
great.
This one?
Yeah.
The lots are
This is green one.
47, 25 feet wide,
The steep. And then the water.
132 feet long.
By day, I'll just kind of walk through how the water, sewer, and all that's property. Currently, there's a water line that runs along the west side of the ski. There's a long line, I believe it's an 8-inch water line. So our thought was to extend the 8-inch water line, through the community, come back up here, through here, and then tie back into the water plant. Wastewater, there's a manhole on the west side of Green One. And so what we would be doing is taking our sewer along the right of way of Green One. And, I think someone from here asked about what this little strip is.
Okay,
So within this, we would extend sanitary sewer, replace the culvert at 13 Green One. And so go underneath 13, and then go underneath Green One and find the manhole. I think it's 10. So that would be our offsite sewer connection. Drainage, right now, some portion of the property kind of goes this way, and then the rest comes this way. So drainage wise, we would, kind of let it go here, and then we would have a ditch to take it, upsize the culvert pipe forward, and then make any modifications outside along Route 1 to the drainage ditch to allow our rest.
Town, you go to Town Creek eventually?
Yes.
Ronnie and I went down with the surveyor to do a lot of the drainage study, and talk about the hurdle issues. Some of it will be accomplished. There is that one section between 11th or 10th and 11th that will be accomplished by all Salter's responsibility to upgrade the drainage system. But for the most part, they've been increasing the drainage volume that you go through there right now.
Yeah, because it's not a deep, well, it's a good size ditch.
Yeah.
It just needs,
I mean,
clean it out.
it needs
It's maintainable,
Need some comments.
On the drainage, and in your October city council meeting, if I understood correctly, we had someone come forward and was having problems with their drainage on 13th Street.
Okay.
So we did have some, because it's,
He actually wanted to speak tonight, but we sent him a letter. So he has apartments right here. There are houses that were built here. And he claims that they're causing him a drainage issue. Well, because the landscape of the hill has changed a little bit from what the hill used to be. So everyone next to their homes, you're probably one of the better examples. You have wells next to your home that allow keep water from going to the south. Your ground tapers off away from the slab. If it tapers towards the slab, you're gonna have water coming. In this particular situation, all these homes were reviewed and met the individual site plan review
it's on Mesquite Street.
on Mesquite Street. And this individual here, who's been there for a long time, but he's never had to adjust his drainage. And therefore, he's the one that actually needs to adjust his drainage for the water that's coming off of his house. And possibly some's coming down, but a lot of that stuff, any of his problems that are here now would be corrected by these elements going in here. Because all that water starts going to the front, as opposed to being able to be on open land and go wherever it wants to.
And you said Mesquite Street, don't you mean 13?
Yes, I'm sorry. Track inside here, very place that's.
You know, I looked at that, and you notice from the side, it looks like it's got a good slope,
It is.
goes to 13. But the problem is at the back. It's coming in at the back, he's got the boards up,
Right,
directing the water away from his.
right. But it's coming this way.
Right.
To this property. And there's very little that you can do about that, except open land. You have to maintain that on your property.
But I've been told that in reference to our involvement here, that a lot of them, currently, if the ditch overflows, it all goes to those houses on the other side of Green. And then it tries to go to what's.
It does, they come over, across our property.
If they come across the property,
Where is yours at?
Yeah, I'm on that.
Yeah.
But see, I'm on, Thank you,
Oh, okay.
so,
So Green Lawn, the reason it comes down specifically due to the person on 12th Street? Yeah, 12th Street. That's an unincorporated road. Or not unmaintained road. And so that person,
maybe,
I'm gonna go with, has, brought it place several times. Every time it rains, it washes down and fills up the whole ditch. So it's very shallow right now because most of it's turf base from her driveway. Her driveway, or are they trying to maintain the?
Just trying to maintain the road for a point if they can utilize it.
Yes. Yes. So that can be resolved when Los Altos goes in, they'll put in a culvert there and pave that street. And that'll solve a lot of it, and they'll clean that entire ditch there and make it a ditch like it's supposed to be. And of course, they'll do their part to cut that as well.
The lot width's still gonna be the 45.
yeah, but we were, our goal is to hit the square footage requirement. So all of these lots are north of 6,500 square.
But the front,
Or 40, the smalls will be a 45, most of them are 50s.
45, and some are 50. And
We're not varying, it just, some of them are a little bit, some of them are 70.
Gonna be the typical cost of a home in this area.
I've had conversations with 3 builders, I think they're all trying to hit that $200,000 price.
200,000, that's better than before.
Yeah.
So the types of variances that you're now asking for are the road width and some lot width type things.
Yeah, primarily on the setbacks, I'd like to, instead of having a 20-foot front
Not the
setback, I
setback.
might want to ask for a 10 to give me some ability to move in case there's a tree in the backyard that the building pad may hit. If I have a 10-foot, I can move the house up a little bit to mitigate hitting that tree.
We talked before about not always having the houses lined up in a row, so that's
So that
necessarily
goes right
a bad thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we may come in and say, you know, it might be on a visual basis, where the builder may come in and say, look, I know we said in our PDD, we try to hold to a 5-foot side setback. If I got a tree, I'm trying to miss it, I need 2 feet, and I get a variance on your side setback from 5 feet to 3 feet or something like that. So that may happen as we kind of go.
But only free bearing.
Trigger. What about parking? That's the only, I think everything else that I had on my list, you pretty much answered. What about parking?
Parking, that was brought up before. You know, obviously the city would like to discourage, you know, parking on the street. And I don't like parking on the street either. Like I said, the section is 28 feet right now, from back to curb to back to curb, which, you know, somebody could park on one side of the street and still have the ability to get around.
So will they have garage?
They'll have I know for sure they'll have a 2-car driveway, and the builder, the last builder I spoke to was just gonna do 2-car garages.
Yeah, good.
2-car garages.
Two-car garage?
Is there an HOA, would there be an HOA?
Not for this small of a community, just, you know, assessing somebody for very little, so it would just be deed restricted.
Hey, Chris, you said something about that was better than the last time. Better in what way?
I like the fact that we have a second exit, because if it's the one exit, if 2 people stopped at the stop sign to get out, it blocks like 4 driveways.
He's got 3 now.
Right, so I'm saying, this is why I think it's better now. This-
Well, I think the other issue that you all raised was fire. In the event that there was a
Yes.
fire.
Yes.
Yes.
But the other thing I was kind of whining about was the sidewalks. Because I'm thinking if you've got a narrow street and people are parking along the side, if these are 3 bedrooms homes, it's safe to assume there'll be some children. How are they going to get up and down the street? And that kind of bothers me. So I had to ask because I didn't see any notes in here.
Your development requirements, just they require the person who's building the home to build the sidewalk. So the builders will be responsible for the sidewalks within the subdivision. And then I think, as we talked about extending the sidewalk from our entry down to 13 along the steep. To the extent that there was.
I think Will said that you didn't have to do that, but
No, we did not have to extend it down. Number one, there's a tree in the way there next to the old stadium building that would be in the middle of the sidewalk, so. But they built their area 13th.
Okay, well, let's talk about the sidewalks.
Sounds like
I didn't hear about that.
From their entrance
To 13.
to 13th,
To where our last project.
where we stopped last.
they're not on the side, if there's no entrance or exit, they're not going to
Right.
be the other one. Come to get to school.
You're supposed to have what, 20 something, what is it, 20 feet either side of your, so many feet either side of your entrance is required.
Now, was it 25 feet or so?
We'll flip that to just go on one side so that we get that extended area to the, but the intersection, only goes back and forth of that anyway.
Just as a comment, which has nothing to do with anything. This is appropriate. In what we've been planning and then having denser development around the city center, as opposed to what may have been talked about before. So I suspect this will get a much friendlier reception.
I like this one. This, you pretty much checked off all the boxes that we threw at you last time.
That's what I try to do, is I'm pretty open, try to get things out, try to address issues to the best I can.
We may never be 100%, but he did a lot of the things that we asked him to do.
I think it's a lot more palatable.
You know, is this an exit? Are these exits? I mean, also.
Entry, third, you enter, and then that one is, yes.
So you got three.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
I can also say,
You're welcome.
Appreciate
One
it.
here.
On the informative
one
one.
here.
So,
I think this is actually,
here,
it's the more
That's the
traffic
one.
over on the green one, which has less,
The one,
it doesn't
one,
have school on the ski.
two, I don't know, I
Or
don't
at
know.
least on the center.
Can't tell from that diagram.
I agree with you.
Said two down here.
Getting more people.
Maybe this one's here. I don't know.
Because it's a better.
Better road, there are fewer homes, and,
You're not at school.
it's not at the school.
Right.
We just don't take that stop sign off.
If they're working, go ahead. If you're working north or Austin area, they'll use 13th to the highway. Otherwise, they'll use Green Lawn to 1623.
We're having trouble seeing the three exits. We can see two.
Green line is
One here and one here,
This is Mesquite
right?
entrance.
Oh, there's an entrance here. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then the two on Green Lawn, here and there.
Here and there and then up here.
So there's the other one on Green Line right here?
The school district, as far as.
Yeah, that moves.
Oh, this is, okay,
Yeah.
so there's the other exit, okay.
And then there's this one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And
So,
that's good.
13.
This is the park, huh?
Yeah. Oh, thought it was obvious with the trees there. That's what it is.
Bringing on in and out of school, at least for the foreseeable future.
Well, they use to keep the school.
Well,
It intersects 13th and Mesquite and then down 13th Street by means. Buses don't even use 13th Street as a route, except for the ones that are picking up and dropping off kids, exact, just on 13th Street.
right,
So it's not a question. It's coming down. So
everything should be coming on Cherry Street or 11th Street. And so they're trying to get away from Mesquite, 13th, any lines of traffic or anything. So that helps the subdivision development, as well as also with this impact. There's no cars coming and going on Mesquite. That'll help a lot of the, if there's kids that are coming from that direction. We did talk to them about the crosswalk and extending the sidewalk along 11th from Los Altos to the front of the school as well. So they're working with us as well. And we will put up stop signs there and so on. Crosswalk.
I like it.
Well, to me, medians or stop signs, they really drive fast. It amazes me how fast they want to go from 1623.
Well, honestly,
And then stop at 7.
I never even noticed it because I slow down at every intersection. I don't trust a driving person in this town. So, I literally slow down whether I got a stop sign or not, because I just don't trust somebody. Because I see people hauling tail on every street.
Yeah.
And it don't matter which one you're on. So if I'm going down the street, which I do often as part of my circle, but I look at, but yeah, I see people going down the map, they'll be crossing Cherry Street at 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. Y'all haven't had a stop sign, I did. But,
Yeah.
that's just me. I'm not saying this problem's not there, but it's a problem on all for city.
Thank you very much.
Speaking of, right?
Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for doing it.
Can I take a minute
Sure.
off record here? I won't use this for a second. Everybody,
We need to go to the UDC. And we have to approve these because now Lori wrote them up and we have them back. And I want to, I don't know about anybody else. Everybody else look at them? I did good. So I have questions and I'm gonna let y'all go first and what y'all have covered that I can tell you what I.
Now, these are changes that have come back from the city, or it's the same thing we sent forward?
These are what we sent and this is what I printed everything that had a red print on it, which means it's something that she changed in the UDC.
It's-
And it should have been, we would have sent her. But I know, it did not come back what we sent.
Okay.
And
well,
so
that's what it's here for, because she took
she
it,
tried to press.
went into the actual documents. And that's why it has to come back to you to make sure she got everything or she didn't get it.
Right. I mean, I'm not complaining, I'm
Yeah, no.
just saying,
It's just put into the actual UDC document.
I printed everything that she had on
Right.
there that was in red. I printed it.
And that's why I was sent back to you all to verify that it's correct.
8:23, we've got about 30, 45 minutes.
I was planning to leave at 8:30.
Okay, so do y'all want to start, you may just go page to page, or we'll get to your spot, and we'll work on it. Is that all right?
Well, I just wanted to ask a quick question. There were a couple of things that related to your departments, that things about inspections and such. That's what I was asking you guys to take a look at. Laurie needed clarification, but it's more your department than ours.
That we already made changes to, or we need to make changes?
You need to, she said back, she said, we need clarification. So I sent the email to you asking you guys for input, and you said, we've already reviewed it. So I didn't know what I was supposed to, what we were supposed to put in there.
I was only in the office for like 10 minutes.
Okay.
Today, I had some major things going on, so they kept me out of the office today. So, but we will go back and look at it. I think we looked at a lot of it, but if she had things that she didn't make changes to,
Just a few, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss something somewhere, because I didn't think you'd gotten back to me on it. Okay. That's
Okay,
great.
okay, I just go through the pages real quickly, and if we hit on something that y'all want to talk about, we'll do it, then we'll move on. And the first one was on page 9, abandonment. Is everybody happy with the way that came out? I'm like, this is something to say about.
No, I think we're good.
Okay, so the abandonment was good, she changed it to 6 months after destruction, 50% of the trade value.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Trey had to add for the county appraisal district.
Yes, it's, that's a note that is for the,
That sounds good. Just put it over what?
that the appraised value is determined by the Blanco County Appraisal District.
Oh. You know that, right?
Do I?
Don't we know that?
As opposed to being a market value, right?
Right. Because anybody can appraise, or get an appraisal of property.
So do you want her to change this if you do need to write it?
We had asked to put it in, but it didn't make it in.
Or did you ask her to put it?
Whatever you just said.
For 6 months or after destruction of 50% of the total appraised value as determined by the Blanco County Appraisal District.
What page are we on?
Page 9. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and then on page 32. This is what, one of the things I think Chris was saying. Well, when you look down towards the bottom in red, it has prohibited use, a use that is not allowed in a specific zoning district, and in some cases, the entire city. In which she had project means an endeavor over which a regulatory agency exerts its jurisdiction and for which one or more permits are required to initiate, continue, or complete the endeavor.
I think I had those in because they were pushed in as one definition, and she separated them into two.
Okay, so that's
It was
good.
just a mistake, and it was just a typo. I'm looking for my
And then
notes.
she did on page 33, and she just added the deposit parks. The land underneath the structure is not divided into separate lots. So we had a long discussion on that. So that's good. If you have any questions, let me know. Now, the one that I came on was on page 46. What she has there for the planning and zoning commission is still incorrect. She's using the ordinance of 338. And it should be ordinance 2017-0-007, which replaced
Yeah.
ordinance 338. She has the definition in the old ordinance. And so it's long, but she could paraphrase that fairly easily. And it is 7 members of the P&Z. 3 must reside inside the city limits. 2 may reside outside the city limits if they own a business within the city limits or are employed in the city limits. And 2 may reside outside the city limits or PTJ. The chairman must reside in Blanco city limits and the vice chair and secretary irrespective of residence. That's what needs to be in there. I'll vote on that. You want to put it on that?
I can get it after the meeting if you want.
Right there?
And that's the ordinance 2017-0-007, correct? Okay.
Say it in there. What was the ordinance?
It was the one you provided to us.
No.
Oh, it's the other one.
2017-0-007.
He provided all.
-007.
I like to know the ordinance.
Get 7 and 8 because they were
Yeah,
indexed, they were indexed incorrectly, that was the problem.
8 was not the right one, 7 was the right one.
So, Susan sent us 7 as part of the attachment.
On page 46.
I'm trying to get there, I was there.
The reason I believe that's important is because our pay, the one individual on here is on this track.
Well, it's important because that's the governing ordinance. That's the only reason. It's the right thing.
I'm just kind of having a
I'm-
look.
No, it takes.
You're
much
welcome
time.
to kick me off.
It takes too much time to have fun, right? It's up to you.
2017,
I'll just give it to Will.
what is it again?
She's gonna give it to you. Now, Will, it says on that, as you can see on there, it says, every 7 commissioners shall reside inside the city limits, and all those 7, 2 or 4 going 5, blah, blah, blah. But that little sheet that I gave you
Right.
summarized it, just boom, 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 rather than going through all the other 7 and 5, 2 to 5, and all that stuff. Okay, so if you'll fix that. And then I didn't see anything else, because we did put the zoning districts in. Until we got over to page 115. And it was under utilities major. And I read this, and I went and asked my husband, how can that be? Because it says such uses must be accompanied by an 80-foot high masonry fence, 80. I said, well, how high is 80 foot?
Real talk.
It should be 8.0.
Oh, thank you. Good, I did not see that one either. Good.
88, yeah.
It says 8, but it's
I read it, but it just,
Me too.
like 80, okay, but I did have this like thought, like, that doesn't sound quite
I
right.
did 80 and divided by 12, and I thought, no, that's not right. 36. No, someone else said, well, just tell me how high 82 is. Near the pump house. Okay. And on that page. Did you get that, Will? And then they got them on 118, she changed that to 281, that's good. And on 119, they changed the MX to R5 for the 8,000 square foot floor area. You see that, that work? I didn't follow with that, y'all do tell me.
Which one is that, Susan?
On page 119.
What was that, R5 with 8,000 square feet?
The medical office is limited to 8,000 square feet of gross floor area in R5 district.
Just for medical, so. Okay.
It's for medical. And then on page 122, she changed, this is under residential uses, apartments developed within a mixed use district, and she put in parentheses R5 question mark. Does anybody, I don't understand what she meant.
I don't think apartments are allowed in R5.
What page were you on?
122.
Duplexes, maybe triplexes, but I don't remember anything about apartments.
I never can find it in here, can I look forever? Did you find it yet, then?
It's on page, let's see. 122 of the change.
Multifamily and special use quadruplex, special use. Townhome triplex permitted.
Did you see it on a commercial uses on that grid? Did you find the apartment? No, I can see the red brick, group home, home daycare, manufacturing projects, single family, oh, multifamily. I think that apartment is under multifamily.
Yeah.
Not really. And so we said, within our private special permit.
Okay.
And it's, so the chart, what chart table number are we giving that?
She made it cool.
Is it 4.2?
Yes.
Okay. And so what was the question in 4.2? I'm writing it down as far as, I'm looking at something else here. What did you decide about that?
Well, apartments developed within a R5 shall have a minimum area of 3,000 square feet per living unit. Is that what we're putting there? I don't recall.
I didn't know to ask you guys that one.
That can't be right. It can't be 3,000 square feet of house.
Well, see, that was one of the questions I had asked about that.
Minimum lot area, okay, that makes sense, yeah. That's all.
Lot area of 3,000 square feet per living unit.
So, and you're referring to lot area, okay. So what do you want me to put the same language over in the R5 as well?
Okay.
Oh, you're doing it right here?
No, I'm trying to understand. So on the C, apartments development with mixed use is not allowed in R5, correct? Or are we doing the special?
Multifamily,
That's
It's
more
called
like,
apartments going to
that's special use, right?
yes, especially,
You'd have to get a special use permit to do it.
yeah.
Well,
So you need to.
I was thinking apartments were in some other zoning
they
category.
were in multifamily, but you can't do a special use. A special use,
That just means they got to go to the council to get a special use permit, isn't it?
right, a special use permit's only good for 12 months.
Right.
So, this would have to fall under maybe, you could say, if you want to allow it in R5, you could allow it under development.
But isn't there a category that apartments are in? Because there's no,
The apartments in.
No, no, either. The only thing I can
It's not
find
here.
is
Well, the
multi-use.
one they're in is multi.
Why wouldn't we put apartments in?
so the places that were apartments already, what category did we assign them when we were doing that zoning map?
I don't know, that's why.
I thought they could come in like one of the MH or whatever that was.
MA, it's MF. MA
MF.
mobile home, manufactured home.
Manufacturing. And apartments go there?
They go out to the other MF.
There is no MF. I don't think there is. I don't think there's a zone called that.
I don't have it up here.
Well, you don't have water here.
I don't have my UBC.
I've got the whole thing in here.
Let me see it.
Yeah, and
It's too big.
I have it here as well. And they're flipped by second.
I suck.
Yeah, by second. I guess it'd be before, huh?
Where your zoning chart, where there should be a,
Yeah, so multifamily is permitted in R4 and special in R5.
so define special for me.
It's the same.
Still learning this chart. So what page are we on, 122?
Well, it's not a full requirement, but I mean, they can't, they have to get approval. They can't, it's just not.
It's not permitted. Not,
They're not, so it's an easy thing. No.
so R4 is the multifamily residential. Yeah, okay. So it's that. So it's permitted in that.
So we'll take off the mixed use and the R5, we should go in there and put it in R4.
Yes.
I am so lost right now. Each one, so.
I like to.
Special use criteria.
You know what, I think I want a different chart. Manual, chart, not the new one.
In a different version.
Yeah.
On 130.
140.
Well, I think 122. Make that R4, so and then the next one was on 123. This I think is what they've been talking about. On page 123 under the home park. As the city is authorized to make inspections as are necessary to determine compliance with the code. And then in red, need clarification, residential and a certified building inspector for commercial property. What does she mean?
Yes, I mean, what is, who does the inspection?
Page 123, I think.
Yeah, it's who does the inspection? It's to determine compliance with the code, period. Residential certified building inspector for the commercial property, period. Who does what?
Are you on page 123?
Mm-hmm. It's 4.6 residential uses 8E.
Yeah, I'll look at it. That's for, as the private manufacturer.
Yeah, so it's just an awkward sentence structure. I think there's some punctuation in the wrong spot there. Residential and certified building inspector for commercial property, period. What are they talking about, you know? What does he do?
Okay. I see what your original question was on the R5 and things.
Okay.
This is something that you were asking, what's special use? For residential units, apartments, there's 4 criteria for a special use permit. If multiple are located on parcels adjacent to each other, access shall be given to adjacent parcels. Limited to 24 units per dwelling acre. Apartment, here's the one, apartments developed within the mixed use district, parentheses R5, shall have a minimum square foot area of 3,000. So she's right. It should say R5 there instead of mixed use. And that defines what the special use permit has to have to go into an R5. In an R4, it's just permitted. So you don't have to meet those criteria. So that it seems consistent.
No R4.
She
So
should
R4 is just permitted.
take out NX on page 122.
Yeah, and just put R5 instead. So
So I thought, okay.
that seems correct.
Okay, so now we're back over to the one, page 123, the manufactured home, and you said it should just say residential and certified building inspector.
That's a sentence. Residential and certified building inspector for commercial property, period. What is it referring to? So I'm thinking it's supposed to be like,
Well, it's saying the city is authorized to make inspections, but the
Yes.
city uses a third-party inspector, so it'd be, whether,
what should it say? How should it be worded then? That's the question.
well, it should be a certified building inspector, whether the city, I used to be a certified building inspector, I'm not certified anymore, but if I wanted to be, I could be the city's building inspector. But we use a third party, so it doesn't need to say that it is a certified building inspector. Then for a commercial property part is the problem I had with the sentence.
What if it just said the city is authorized to make inspections as are necessary to determine compliance with codes? City decides how they do that.
You get a sentence with no verb, that's the problem.
Yeah, I know, the sentence is not a sentence, but what if it were just gone?
So I just wasn't sure what to do with it.
I will, let me discuss it with Lori, and I'll come up with better verbiage and bring back to you.
Whatever you do with that, you need to take out, need clarification.
Yeah.
And I agree, residential, compliance with the code, if it's residential and a certified building inspector, see, that doesn't make,
That sentence and the city authorized sentence all need to be rewritten so they merge together. And I'll rewrite that.
Okay.
Get it to you.
all right.
I need to do my work. Not there.
It should say, use especially for that code.
The next one I had
That's
was,
the old thing.
on 315, she took out that, I3. That's okay, I didn't see anything wrong with that, okay, I know. No, on page, I'm sorry,
Okay.
what page was I okay with?
Yeah.
131, page 131.
I figure out where
She has a 2A, 2I, and 3I, and she just took out 3I.
It's a formatting.
That numerical order.
Okay, yeah, it's just, it was formatting.
Okay.
Is that all right with everybody? Okay, so on page 133. There's residential uses, this is under minimum standard in a planning development district. Residential uses, unless otherwise provided for by the PD ordinance, on page 133. The following standards shall apply to all residential uses within a PD district. And then she's got 3 little X's there. What does that mean?
It means there were no.
Where are the standards?
Yeah, the standards weren't stated. They said there were 3 standards and they never put them in.
Right.
So what are the standards?
No idea.
That's my
What
question.
did it say before?
I took that straight out of the UDC, so I didn't have an older version. I was hoping you guys could remember. But obviously, you're no help at all.
That's going to be defined in some form. I'll have to go and look it up and see. There's going to be some format of approved this for a PD ordinance, so it's going to be something as approved by P&Z and city council. Be some kind of verbiage to that extent.
So we're coming before the council for approval. Okay.
City, P&Z first and city council.
And then, when you get these, would you just, email? We can just check off.
Yeah, I'll go with her tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, good, because I was going to try to do that someday.
Yeah. or the next thing I found was in 140, page 148.
What about-
Back up just 1 minute, page 134.
You know, significant
Strands
strands.
of
of
stick.
I think it's stand.
Yeah, she just forgot to make the edit. We talked about it, but she just forgot to put it
I'm not even sure there is such a thing as a strand of tea.
in. I think the strand is being a beach, you know?
Where are we at, 134?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's stand rather than strand.
but she just, it was in the original list, but she just missed it, so.
Well, I'll tell you, I did not look at spelling, and I didn't. If y'all got anything, y'all let us find that. I didn't find it.
So the next one's is on page 148. It references having a certificate of appropriateness application procedure, and it says see Appendix D, and there's no Appendix D. So we need to add a copy of the certificate of appropriateness application procedure as Appendix D.
So that's a historic district. thing.
Right, and that's why I was wondering if they had got any feedback from Retta, because she sat in
No,
on
we had that in the office.
it. Okay,
It exists.
Okay.
I was looking at number C, and I didn't think, it looked like we added all building structures, objects, and sites shall be recognized as public for their own time. I didn't think anything wrong with that. I need to look at my schedule. Now, on page 149, it references Appendix D. I
yeah,
can't find Appendix D.
That's just the appendix
Oh,
they're
that's
talking
what
about.
she's talking
Yeah.
Do we have one
Where that's Appendix D.
on page 149?
It's the certificate of appropriateness thing.
It does exist. We have,
Are you going to insert it?
we'll have it inserted.
okay. So the next one of issue was,
Page 150. So there won't be no building permit or demolition permit to be issued unless the commission makes a finding of hardship exists.
I don't see anything
And
wrong.
now we're talking about historical commission, right?
Right.
Okay. So I'm just gonna check mark. Here's another one on 153, and we're just adding a property existing. I'm glad you changed that. In G, you put legal non-conforming use of property existing as of, and then she changed it to July 9, which was the previous UDC.
UDC date, yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
And then a little further down on that same page, that's where they had the wrong word there, and it should have been law. So she put in law, but I don't know if she, so that's, I don't know. It said late, it said late,
That's good.
yeah, 'cause it was late vested, right, she put law, okay.
And then on page 170,
On page 155, there just needed to be a space after section.
Oh,
Where,
It's,
page 155.
155,
where the red was. 12:1.
12-1. Don't see 12s on 155.
Maybe it's around.
155.
What's the section number?
I didn't have that written down.
Section 4.14.
Yeah, no, but there's no 12s there anywhere.
oh, you know what, that was on the original list, I bet you. That was part of the page that was original before
Oh,
she numbered it.
I don't see anything.
Tell me again, Rachel, it was section what, 4.12?
I don't have the section written down.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't do that.
What was the sentence?
Section 4, I think, is what it was.
So you have 14.
There's no space. It was all together.
Oh, okay. Was it the demolition permit thing? Because I had a reference about the space there, and she took it out.
I think that might have been it.
Yeah, I had one at 149 that she checked, that we asked her to take the space out, and she did.
How did you look on the do those with the What are we looking for, space in between a word or something?
That's not important. Let's move
I
on.
think we got it. She got
Okay,
it.
so look on page 170, and that has our table of 5.1 lot standards. And I look at it, that's right, if he wrong out, so everything is good. I just put check one side. And now on page 178. You go down to 5, you put that next use, which is good, and just let commercial buildings in there, perfect. Right? Everybody?
Yeah,
Now, when you get to page 229, which is chapter 6 of infrastructure and public works. I have some problems with that.
we didn't even review that one.
No, but I had problems with it. So
Yeah.
she changed it, and since she changed it, and we're gonna approve this thing, right or wrong, whether we changed it or not. She has under 6.1, number 3, the Planning and Zoning Commission and the city engineer to have an annual review of amendments to the City of Austin criteria manual. I've never seen it, heard it, found it, we've never had a review of that. I've never even seen it. And we changed it from the City of Blanco to the City of Austin criteria.
And that's,
So, it was a typo to begin with. The city of Blanco never had a set of criteria manual. They adopted the city of Austin criteria.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
so we adopted their manual.
Yeah,
So that's why we referred to it. That's what I was wondering.
it was just written the first time as the city of Blanco criteria manual. This came up back in January, when some of our first developers started going. They're looking for, they sent engineers calling us asking for our criteria manual. Because it's not referenced anywhere. We don't have a criteria manual. Our UDC should have read the Austin criteria manual because we adopted it.
That makes sense.
Okay, well, on page 234, it says, where any provision of this code conflicts with a provision or requirement of the adopted City of Blanco manual, the more stringent requirements shall control. So where is the City of Blanco manual? What is it?
It's, do you have a copy of it in your office, Will, or do you have a copy online that you refer to?
It all goes back to the city of Austin.
Right. Do you have a copy of the City of
I
Austin
do have a
manual?
copy.
Did you want to, so we're not going to use it as an appendix. We're just going to refer to the fact that you have it in the office.
And then
Yeah, but
number
it's
G,
all online, so every engineer send to at the court, I send them to the city of Austin criteria manual, they download it offline, and then they put their designs together. Then when they send it to our engineer, because I never have anything to do with that, they send it to our site plan review engineer. He refers to, because he knows we've already made this change to his UDC, he knows to hold them to the city of Austin criteria manual.
Okay, do you have a certain date or a certain version?
It's the latest part, I don't know what
It's
it is.
continually amended.
Okay,
I am confused because on number B, right above that, it says such portions that might be hereinafter amended, deleted, modified by the City of Blanco shall be the governing document. So do we or do we not have a governing document?
The UDC is our governing
I don't know.
document.
Look on page 234, item B. Such portions that may be hereinafter amended, deleted, or modified by the City of Blanco shall be the governing document in the design, development, and construction of all improvements of the City of Blanco.
there was a mud.
So let me make a suggestion. in the first thing, where it changes to City of Austin criteria manual, that's correct. Here on 234, where it says all references within the City of Blanco criteria manual, yada, 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 just delete the City of Blanco, just the criteria manual, because it refers back already to that. So there's no conflict. And the portion that says it allowed, that number B allows, if the city wanted to amend it on their own, they could, but they probably never will, so it doesn't matter. But all you have to do is replace City of Blanco manual in C with criteria manual. Same thing in D, City of Blanco criteria manual becomes criteria manual. And just take out the City of Blanco stuff, because then it all refers back to the Austin one.
That's fine, I'm just saying what it reads.
Correct, yeah.
Confusing.
So that would clean it up, just take the City of Blanco part.
Well, I'll do it, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's not confusing to the engineers, because they.
Yeah.
That's what it's really hard.
That's why I didn't want to get into these sections,
I agree. So
because that's their business.
that's why we didn't do this section.
So on 230, on page 232, asking for clarification, do we not want one?
Advanced funding.
Improvements by the City of Blanco options, yeah, that either needs clarification or deletion.
All right, Brian, you know about this one. Yeah. This is the section of the UDC that talks about a developer who has the option of so let's use, since we've had this conversation before, let's use State Bill as an example. They need to upgrade the infrastructure for their substation. They can either do it on their own time and build it under cost of lots and so on. As they come into our infrastructure and ours need to be upgraded because of them, they can add contribution in percentage. I think in the past, there's been those deals where they do
And the rest of it change, but I just could check my file.
something where
I got a couple more.
they put it so when it comes
Hey,
down to.
I would make the same suggestion, given we talk about this. We reviewed sections 1 through 5, and we're reviewing the changes to those. We did not review 6, 7, and 8, and we're not reviewing the changes.
Oh, you don't want to check.
Let the city take care of that part.
That's fine.
I did have one question though about.
Otherwise, we start over and we review those sections.
I'm just looking at the changes, not particularly the sections.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand why she would change the Blanco manual to Austin.
And Rachel and I had looked in just for like duplication, spelling errors, that kind of thing, not for content. And I had asked Laurie to make sure that the appropriate department was promoted for content. So that's why I think that's why they're in there. For exactly that reason. It's
So
not a big.
I guess that, what we're saying here, just for my information now, because this is just me. All the manuals that we have pertaining to all the infrastructure and all this stuff, we're using the City of Austin.
For drainage functions. Yes, that it changed to engineers for drainage criteria. The criteria says law to site development, it falls on the City of Austin's, design criteria.
And yeah, on page 233, it's for Austin criteria manual for transportation, utilities, and drainage. So all of that, we're using whatever Austin has.
Right.
I do, I just have one, and I think, this was on the old page 233. The new page would be, the new document would probably be 333. It just said, it's referring to pipes, and it says over property not owned by the owner of the property to be severed by the connection. I think it's served or serviced.
Where are you?
It looks like it's page 333 now. And it's section 6, yes, it looks like it's section 6.7.
Yeah, it doesn't go with that.
Okay, well then it's, but it's section 6.7, 1B1, 1BI. Six B. All right, try page 233. 234. It's on one of that section there.
Page 249.
You got on 249 then? Okay, I didn't mark the page on it. I looked at it. I just wasn't sure what the correct word was. I didn't think severed looked right.
Yeah, it's probably served, yeah.
Served or service? I wasn't sure.
Where?
6.7, and it's 1BI.
There's a whole paragraph marked in red at the end of that paragraph.
But it said severed by the connection, and I think severed is the wrong word. That's the whole point. It looks like it's the top of page 249. Thanks, Trey.
One B, what is it?
Served or serviced?
One B, what?
Oh, 1BI.
One B, I.
And he's got on the page there from the screen.
Yeah. The next to last line of that red thing where it says severed at the beginning of the sentence.
Right there, yep, right near that little, your arrow there. I mean, maybe that is the right word. I just couldn't.
I don't think it is. No, it doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't be severed by the connection. This fell on you or something.
It's talking about.
Yeah, it's gotta be served.
Referring back to the owner of the property.
Okay, thank you. Everybody, thanks for working on the UDC. I just kind of wanted to get the format in place.
No.
And that's what we're gonna do.
That's all I found.
Anything in red in section 6, 7, 8? What's on you?
I had to put these together, so I was learning that. We had something, but.
Sure. So do we have to do anything official with that?
We have to do what?
We have to present it to
Do we-
city council now, yeah.
We have to approve it, so we can send it to city council, final review.
So we make sure we're sending this kind of, that we approve the things in sections 1 through 5.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so, and so if you just want to do like a motion,
I move that we send forward to city council the changes to UDC in sections 1 through 5.
I second.
All in favor?
All right, excellent. So glad that's done.
Okay, so now wait a minute. We talked about in old business, the ordinance, so he's gonna fix that. We're doing container homes, we'll just table that one.
Well, was someone there about, we got a reelect Trey or something?
What we need, on the ordinance, review the ordinance, what we need to do is to, elect a vice chair.
We have one.
We do not elect a vice chair.
We did. Same time elected David.
Oh, well, good, then we're done.
That's done.
Didn't know that.
When I saw that, I
just wanted
said,
to make
that
sure.
don't make
I
sense.
thought I come down, I thought, let's make sure that we have that. So let's-
We have a vice chair.
We'll consider the P&Zs, we'll table that,
Yes.
and then we'll table the workshop. Hopefully in December, we won't have all this minutia, and we can get back to zoning. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'll vote yes.
All in favor?